My name is Olivia Cooper, and last Christmas my mother called to tell me not to come home for the holidays because my face might ruin the family photos. "Honey," she said in that faux gentle voice she saves for cruelty wrapped in caring, "maybe you shouldn't come this year. David will be there, and you know how he reacts to certain people. We don't want your face to make anyone feel uncomfortable." Before I could catch my breath after that kick in the butt, my father intervened. "Some people are just too distracting, honey. Do you understand?" Then my sister Macy, always ready to turn the knife, added from the background, "He's really uncomfortable around ugly women. It's nothing personal, Olivia." But it was personal. It had always been personal. This wasn't just one celebratory dinner. It was the culmination of 28 years of existence as the family disappointment, the Cooper girl who had committed the unpardonable sin of being born with the wrong face. You know, sometimes I think some stories start before we're born. Mine certainly started that way. From the first moments of my childhood, I knew I was the family disappointment, a plain, clumsy Cooper girl who could never compare to her golden sister Macy. Our family photo albums tell this story with painful clarity. Have you ever noticed how family photos can reveal the truth about family dynamics better than any words? In our house, these albums always lay prominently displayed in the living room, as if showing the world our perfect family. But once you opened them, the contrast became obvious. Macy's 16th birthday was celebrated at the country club, with its grand ballroom, elaborate decorations, and a guest list that included half the city. Would my anniversary be the same? A small cake and a gift card from Target, accompanied by my mom's transparent excuse that they couldn't afford a party that year, despite Dad's recent promotion. I remember standing in the corner of our kitchen, holding that $25 card, trying to squeeze out a smile while Mom fussed over preparing a special dinner for Dad's business meeting the next day. "Olivia, would you mind staying out of the way? I have so much to do," she threw without even looking at me. In that moment, I felt not just frustrated, but invisible in my own home. This inequality extended to every aspect of our lives. You probably think I'm exaggerating, don't you? That this doesn't happen in real families? Unfortunately, in my family, it was a daily reality. Macy got a new Honda Civic at 17, while I was reluctantly given access to the family's aging sedan. Her college tuition was fully paid for, while I accumulated student loans that still burden me to this day. Even our bedrooms told the story of our different situations. Macy's room went through 3 complete remodeling projects in high school. I still remember my mom leading the designer through the house, excitedly discussing hues and textures for my sister's bedroom. Macy is so sensitive to her surroundings. She needs a space that reflects her vibrant personality, my mom told the designer as I sat at my desk doing homework. When I worked up the courage to ask to repaint my faded purple walls, my request was dismissed as unnecessary. "Olivia, your room is perfectly functional. Besides, who sees it anyway?" Mom said with mild irritation, as if the very fact that I dared to ask for something for myself was inappropriate. My problems with severe acne as a teenager became another avenue for subtle cruelty. I remember the day my mom first noticed my rashes. We were sitting at the breakfast table, and I hoped that the foundation I'd swiped from her makeup bag had hidden the worst of it. But under the bright kitchen light, there was no chance of hiding anything. She sighed dramatically, looking across the table at me. "Oh my God, Olivia. Macy never had this problem." Her voice was full of such frustration, as if I'd grown those pimples on purpose to upset her. What followed were endless complaints about the cost of dermatologist visits and medications. Every time she paid for my creams or antibiotics, she would sigh and mutter something about money wasted. "Do you even try to look after your skin? Macy's is always so meticulous with her grooming regimen." You know what the most painful thing about this situation is? Even as you grow up, a part of you still hopes that one day they'll see you, really see you. That maybe if you try hard enough, achieve enough, they'll finally recognize your worth. That hope is the cruelest part of it all. The differences extended to how our accomplishments were recognized. Macy's cheerleading trophies and prom queen crown earned champagne celebrations and proud announcements to everyone in their social circle. When Macy's became prom queen, my parents threw a party. They invited all their friends over to brag. My mom even ordered a huge banner that said, "Congratulations to our queen," that hung over the front door for a month. And my win at the regional science fair? Dad said absent-mindedly, "That's nice, honey," before immediately turning the conversation to Macy's upcoming competition. I came home with a big trophy and certificate, thinking that maybe this time they would be proud. Dad took one look at my trophy, nodded, and asked, "By the way, do you know what time Macy's rehearsal is tomorrow? We need to plan who's going to pick her up." As an adult, this pattern has only intensified. I remember when Macy announced her engagement to David, a handsome, successful lawyer who drove a BMW and projected the ideal image of success. My parents treated it as the ultimate family achievement, with lavish parties and endless planning discussions. One evening, I was sitting in my parents' kitchen listening to my mom talk on the phone about the latest engagement plans. Yes, the engagement ring is adorable. 2 carats, can you believe it? And David insists on having the engagement party at the country club. So generous. When she finally hung up, I tried to share my news. I had just gotten a promotion at the veterinary clinic where I worked. She looked at me with that expression, half empty, half polite, that I knew so well. "That's good, dear. By the way, have you bought a dress for Macy's engagement party yet? Please pick out something appropriate." The last word hung in the air like a warning. I knew what it meant. Don't you dare take attention away from your sister. Don't you dare be conspicuous. Don't you dare be anything but a shadow. My parents practically idolized David, deferring to his preferences and opinions as if he were royalty. When David gave his opinion on politics or economics, my dad would look at him with such admiration, as if he were listening to the wisest man in the world. "David is so good at finance," Dad often bragged to his friends. "We are so blessed to have him join our family." And my boyfriend Jake? A kind, compassionate vet who somehow saw beyond my physical flaws to the person underneath. He was barely recognized in my family. His name was often forgotten in conversation, and his existence was seen as an unexpected development rather than a cause for joy. "How is Jim?" Mom asked one day, even though I'd been dating Jake for over a year. "Jake, Mom. His name is Jake." "Of course it's Jake. Does he still work at that animal clinic?" Her tone made it clear that a career as a veterinarian was incomparable to David's prestigious legal career. The weight of being a family second thought had shaped my self-image for years, creating deep complexes about my appearance and worth that I carried like invisible scars. They were only visible in the way I instinctively shrunk in social situations, or apologized for taking up space in rooms where Macy's effortlessly drew attention. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and instinctively make yourself smaller? Like you're apologizing for your very existence? I've lived like that for most of my life, sucking in my stomach, slouching to appear smaller, speaking softly so as not to attract attention. When you're constantly being told you're not attractive enough, not special enough, not everything, you start to believe it. Even though I had built a life of quiet accomplishments, graduating college with honors, establishing a career I loved working with animals, and finally finding a relationship with someone who appreciated me, I couldn't escape the lingering hope that someday my family would see me, really see me, with the same appreciation they instantly provided Macy and David. I met Jake at the local animal shelter where I worked after college. He came in as a volunteer vet to do some routine checkups. I remember being struck by his gentleness with the animals, especially the frightened ones. When he first spoke to me, I instinctively looked over my shoulder, certain he was addressing someone else. "You're amazing with that old pit bull," he said, with a smile that seemed genuine. "Most people give up with stubborn cases like that." I remember blushing and muttering something about just needing patience. He invited me over for coffee after my shift, and I accepted, sure it was just a friendly gesture. As our coffee turned into dinner, and dinner turned into a walk under the stars, I still couldn't believe that someone like him could be interested in someone like me. "Why me?" I finally asked him after a few dates, when it was clear that this wasn't just a casual friendship. We were sitting in his car after dinner, and I finally worked up the courage to ask the question that had been plaguing me. Jake looked at me with genuine surprise. "What do you mean?" "Well, you know," I gestured awkwardly toward my face. "I don't really... I mean, I know I'm not pretty, and you could be dating anyone, and I just don't understand why you're wasting your time on—" He stopped me, taking my hand in his. "Olivia," he said with a seriousness I'd rarely seen, "you're one of the most beautiful people I've ever met. You're smart, caring, and when you smile, a real smile, not that polite smile you show most people, the whole world lights up. I don't waste time with you. I'm happy to spend time with you." Can you imagine what it was like to hear those words after so many years of feeling invisible? I didn't know how to react. Part of me wanted to believe him, but the louder part, the part formed by years of family comments, whispered that he was just being polite, that it couldn't be true, that I didn't deserve a man like him. Over time, it became clear that Jake really did see something in me that I didn't see in myself. He supported my career, listened to my thoughts with genuine interest, and made me feel valued, not because of how I looked, but because of who I was. Our relationship developed slowly, organically. Unlike Macy's tumultuous romance with David, which progressed with the speed of wildfire and just as much drama, my relationship with Jake was a calm river, stable, secure, and surprisingly deep. When I first mentioned Jake to my family, the reaction was exactly what I expected. A polite, disinterested nod, followed quickly by a quick transition to the latest news about David's career progress or Macy's new designer bag. "The vet? That's cute," Mom said, with that slightly condescending tone she reserved for what she considered unimpressive. "David's just working on a big case that might lead him to partnership next year." I never invited Jake to family events, partly protecting him from their indifference, partly ashamed of how they might treat him. On the rare occasions when he did run into my family, his existence was barely acknowledged. At my father's birthday party last year, Jake attended as my +1. My parents didn't even bother to properly introduce him to their friends. They nodded briefly in his direction and continued talking as if he didn't exist. Meanwhile, David was the center of attention, with my dad's hand on his shoulder as he proudly introduced him to everyone as my superstar son-in-law. Moments like that evoked mixed feelings in me: shame at the way my family treated the man who had been so good to me, and deep gratitude that Jake didn't seem to take offense at all. "They just don't know what they're losing," he said later as we drove home from the party. No judgment, no bitterness, just a statement of fact. His ability to not take their disdain personally was another reason I fell in love with him more and more. However, despite the comfort I found in my relationship with Jake, I couldn't completely give up hope of my family's approval. It was a compulsive need I couldn't let go of, a desire to make my parents proud of me, for Macy to view me as an equal, for them all to see the value in who I was rather than the constant disappointment in who I wasn't. The phone call last Christmas was the turning point, the moment when the fragile hope I'd cherished all these years was finally shattered. To be conspicuously excluded from the family celebration because of my appearance, to hear my parents and sister say those words so nonchalantly, as if it was the smartest decision in the world, it shattered something deep inside me. I remember sitting on my couch after that call, phone still in my trembling hand, hot tears streaming down my cheeks. I wasn't crying over missing Christmas. I was crying over every birthday, every accomplishment, every moment where I hoped for love and got indifference instead. I cried for the child I was, the girl who so desperately wanted to be seen. Maybe you felt it too, the feeling that no matter what you do, it will never be good enough. That in the eyes of those who should love you unconditionally, you will always somehow be insufficient. This is a type of pain that is hard to explain to those who haven't experienced it. It's not a sharp pain like a cut or a burn. It's a dull, constant pain that becomes so familiar, you almost forget it's there until something makes you feel it again. That night, Jake found me still on the couch, curled up crying. I wasn't going to tell him. Part of me was so ashamed of being rejected by my own family that I wanted to bury it deep inside. But when he sat down next to me, his face full of concern, the words just poured out. Through all the sobs and confused explanations, I finally squeezed out, "They don't want me there because of my face, Jake. They don't think I'm attractive enough to be in their family pictures." I'd never seen such an expression on Jake's face, a mixture of shock, fury, and sadness that was instantly replaced by something hard and determined. He didn't try to comfort me with empty reassurances or minimize the pain. Instead, he wrapped his arms around me and held me until my tears dried, then gently lifted my chin so I looked into his eyes. Then we'll create our own Christmas, one where everyone present really wants to be with you, appreciates you, and sees how amazing you are. And I promise you, Olivia, from now on, you'll never lack for that as long as I'm around. In that moment, though I didn't yet know how our story would unfold, I felt the first thrill of something new and possible, a life not defined by the one who rejected me, but enriched by the ones who chose me. You know, there are those moments in life that are forever burned into your memory. Moments when the world seems to stand still, and you feel the foundation you thought would hold you up forever, no matter what, crumbling beneath your feet. For me, that moment was a phone call 2 weeks before Christmas last year. It was an ordinary Tuesday. I had just returned from work at the veterinary clinic where I had spent the day assisting with a complicated surgery on an old Labrador. It was nearly 6 in the evening. It had long since gotten dark outside the window, and I planned to relax with a book and a cup of tea. It was then that the phone rang with my mom's number on the screen. "Hi, Mom," I answered, clasping the phone between my ear and shoulder as I heated up the leftovers from last night's dinner. I was expecting the usual conversation, a brief exchange of pleasantries, a few questions about Macy's that I was used to getting in lieu of interest in my life. "Honey," she began in that faux gentle voice that always preceded her most painful comments, "maybe you shouldn't come for Christmas this year." I froze, my soup spoon frozen halfway to the microwave. "What? Why?" "Well, David will be there, and you know how he reacts to certain people," she continued, choosing her words carefully. "We don't want your face ruining family photos or making anyone feel uncomfortable." Have you ever felt the words literally knock the air out of you? Like someone punched you in the stomach and you can't breathe? At that moment, I couldn't even find the words to answer. Just stood there in my little kitchen, stunned by what my own mother had just said. Before I could digest that blow under my breath, my father interjected into the conversation. Apparently they were on speakerphone. "Some people are just too distracting, honey. Do you understand?" And then, like a knife to an open wound, came Macy's voice from the background with the most devastating blow. "He's really uncomfortable around ugly women. It's nothing personal, Olivia. It's just the way he is." Nothing personal? How could being excluded from a family celebration because of my face not be personal? I don't remember what I muttered in response. I think it was something like, "Okay," or "I understand." And then I just hung up. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the couch, curled up in a ball, sobbing like I'd never sobbed before. It wasn't just tears of frustration or resentment. It was a deep, heartbreaking cry that seemed to come from the very depths of my being. A lament for all those years when I was desperately trying to be good enough, smart enough, interesting enough to earn my family's love. You know what the most painful thing about situations like this? You keep hoping. Even after all the disappointments, all the times you've been sidelined, even after years of neglect and microaggressions, part of you still hopes. This time will be different. This time they'll see me. This time I'll be enough. But that night, something inside me finally broke. Maybe it was the last fragile thread of hope I had held onto for so long. Through my tears, I saw the truth with startling clarity. I would never be good enough for my family simply because of who I am. I don't know how long I spent in that state. Maybe an hour, maybe 3. The outside world ceased to exist. All that was left was the pain and the realization that my own family thought I was too ugly to sit at the same table with them at Christmas. That's how Jake found me when he got home that evening. He found me still on the couch, eyes swollen with tears, in the half-dark apartment. "Olivia, what's wrong?" His voice was filled with such genuine concern that it triggered another wave of tears. Between convulsive breaths, I told him everything. About the phone call, about my mother's words, about Macy's comment, about how my own family found me too physically repulsive to attend Christmas dinner. Jake's reaction revealed everything about his character, about the kind of person he really was. First, pure rage on my behalf. I saw his face tense, his fists clench, a dangerous glint in his eyes. For a moment, he looked like he was going to grab the car keys and drive straight to my parents' house. And then, just as quickly, his expression changed to one of gentle compassion. He sat down next to me, wrapped his arms around me, and just held me while I cried, gently wiping away my tears and whispering words of comfort. "They don't deserve you, Olivia," he finally said, when my sobs had subsided to quiet sobs. "If they can't see how amazing you are, it's their loss, a huge loss." Then he paused, his eyes suddenly lighting up with determination. "We're going to create our own Christmas traditions, one where you won't just be included, but will be the main person. I promise you, this will be the best Christmas of your life." At the time, I couldn't have imagined how prophetic his words would prove to be. For the next 2 weeks, Jake acted with quiet determination. He didn't mention my parents or try to convince me to reconcile with them. Instead, he focused on creating our own celebration. I noticed the little details, the way he figured out my favorite Christmas dishes through unobtrusive questions, the way he researched holiday recipes online in the evenings, the way he smiled mysteriously while answering phone calls beyond my hearing. When Christmas came, I woke up to the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft holiday music coming from our small kitchen. Jake had made breakfast, blueberry pancakes my favorite, and decorated the table with candles and a small spruce branch with a red bow. "This is just the beginning," he smiled, kissing my forehead. The day turned into a series of little joys. We took a walk in the park where the recent snow had turned everything into a winter fairy tale, stopped by the local animal shelter to bring treats for the cats and dogs. Jake knew how important it was to me to care for abandoned animals, and then returned home where he asked me to rest while he prepared Christmas dinner. What he created was amazing. He made an incredible dinner: prime rib perfectly grilled, homemade side dishes, my favorite rosemary mashed potatoes, freshly baked bread, and even cranberry sauce from his grandmother's recipe. The table was decorated with candles and spruce branches, and in the corner of the room was a small Christmas tree he'd secretly bought and decorated while I'd been at work the day before. "Jake, this is incredible," I whispered, feeling tears come to my eyes, this time from overwhelming gratitude. He just smiled. "You deserve a holiday where you are appreciated and loved for who you are." After dinner, we exchanged gifts. My parents always gave me practical, impersonal things: kitchen supplies, gift cards to department stores, once even a gym membership, which was more of a hint than a gift. Jake's gift was completely different. It was an antique book about rare species of animals, exactly the kind I'd once glimpsed in the window of a second-hand bookstore, and mentioned that it reminded me of a book I'd loved as a child. Such a small detail, casually mentioned months ago, and he remembered. How did you find it?" I asked, gently flipping through the yellowed pages with exquisite illustrations. "Remember that store on Maple Street? I went there every week for 3 months, checking to see if it had reappeared. The owner finally contacted his supplier and found it just for me." Such care, such attention to the details of my life, my desires. It was a whole new experience. My gift to him seemed so modest in comparison: a warm scarf I'd been knitting in secret from him for weeks, and an antique veterinary book I'd found in an online auction. But when he opened it, the look of pure delight on his face told me all I needed to know. "Olivia, this is perfect. You know me so well," he said, as he wrapped himself in his scarf and gently leafed through the book. The evening continued in a warm, cozy atmosphere. We watched old Christmas movies, drank hot chocolate, and just enjoyed each other's presence. It was so unlike the tense, formal Christmas evenings I remembered from my childhood, where every word, every gesture was judged and often found to be not good enough. And then something happened that changed my life forever. We were sitting by the fireplace, the firelight softly illuminating the room, quiet music playing. Jake looked a little nervous, which was unusual for him. He got up, saying he'd forgotten another present, and went out to the bedroom. When he came back, his hands were empty, and I looked at him in confusion. Then he dropped to one knee in front of me, and my heart stopped. "Olivia," he began, his voice quiet but confident. "I know that this year has been difficult for you because of the situation with your family. I know they've caused you pain that runs deep, but I want you to know something. You're the most incredible woman I've ever met." His words washed over me like healing rain, each syllable slowly dissolving the years of criticism and comparisons that had shaped my image of myself since childhood. You're kind to every animal that comes into the clinic, even the ones that try to bite you. You remember the names of all our elderly clients and always ask about their grandchildren. You cry during sad movies and laugh at my terrible dad jokes. You're beautiful inside and out, and I can't imagine my life without you." When he pulled a small vintage box out of his pocket and opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring, I felt tears fill my eyes again, but this time from pure joy. "It's my grandmother's ring," he said softly. "She was an incredible woman, strong, kind, and with a big heart, just like you. She would have wanted you to have it. Olivia Cooper, will you marry me?" The contrast with Macy's lavish betrothal couldn't have been more obvious. Her proposal was a public spectacle designed for maximum exposure on social media, in an expensive restaurant, with a singer singing her favorite song and a photographer documenting every moment. Jake's proposal was intimate and authentic, focused entirely on our connection and not on the perceptions of others. "Yes," I whispered through my tears. "Yes, I will marry you." As he placed the ring on my finger, I realized that this wasn't just agreeing to be his wife. It was a choice to believe that maybe I was worthy of love, just the way I was, a revolutionary concept after years of being compared to my sister and finding me inadequate. What my family never bothered to find out about Jake, because they never asked a single question about him other than his profession, was that his family owned a chain of high-end veterinary clinics in 3 states, that he had a doctorate in veterinary medicine and spoke 3 languages, that despite his family's considerable wealth, he preferred to drive a practical pickup truck and wear simple clothes because he valued substance over appearance. These facts came out gradually as I began to learn more about his family after we got engaged. He never intentionally hid them. He just didn't consider his background or financial status a defining part of his identity. What a refreshing contrast to my family, where status and appearance were currency, more valuable than kindness or character. Getting to know Jake's family was a revelation to me. Unlike the tense, evaluative meetings with my parents, the first dinner with Margaret and Robert, Jake's parents, was surprisingly warm. "We're so happy to finally meet you, Olivia," Margaret said, hugging me like we were already family. "Jake can't stop talking about how amazing you are." During dinner, they asked me questions, real questions about my interests, my work at the animal shelter, my education, and really listened to the answers. They laughed at my stories, asked me to tell more, treated my opinions with respect. For someone who grew up being virtually invisible in her own family, it was almost disorienting. Jake's family accepted me immediately with genuine warmth, asking thoughtful questions about my interests and hobbies, listening carefully to my answers, and, most surprisingly, treating me as if my presence was a gift, not a burden. Margaret, Jake's mom, even helped me find a wedding dress that I felt truly beautiful in for the first time in my life. We went to a small bridal boutique in a neighboring town, and she waited patiently while I tried on different styles, genuinely admiring each one, but speaking clearly when something didn't fit. When I stepped out in a simple but elegant A-silhouette gown with delicate embroidery and a small train, her eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Olivia," she whispered, "you look absolutely radiant. Jake will fall in love with you all over again when he sees you in this." Compare that to my mother's comment when I mentioned wanting to go shopping for a wedding dress. "Well, we'll have to find something appropriate." That single comment contained all her doubts that I could look attractive in a wedding dress, all her disbelief that anyone could genuinely want to marry me. Jake's father, Robert, offered to walk me down the aisle, since my own father couldn't be bothered to show up. "I'd be honored," he said simply when I explained that my parents wouldn't be attending the wedding. No judgment, no disbelief, just quiet understanding and a desire to fill the void left by their absence. Perhaps the stark contrast between Jake's family and my own was most painfully illustrated when, upon learning that my parents would not be attending our wedding, Margaret hugged me tightly and said, "Family is not always bound by blood. Sometimes we choose our own family, and we choose you." Those words unlocked something long frozen inside of me, allowing me to imagine what it would be like to be valued simply for existing, rather than constantly trying to earn approval that I will never receive. Have you ever experienced a moment of such clarity that everything you thought you knew about yourself and your life is suddenly overturned? It was so for me in that moment, in Margaret's arms, with her words resonating in my heart. I realized that I had spent my whole life chasing recognition from those who were never going to give it to me, while my real family, the people who see you, appreciate you, and choose you every day, was right in front of me. And so, with each day we got closer to our wedding, I began to redefine what family meant, and for the first time, I believed that maybe I was worthy of love after all. Have you ever wondered what true family means to you? Is it a blood bond or a bond we create by choice? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to give me a like if my story resonates with your soul. Subscribe to find out how my relationship with Jake and his family evolved and what lessons I learned about what it truly means to be accepted and loved. Jake's proposal on Christmas night turned a day that had begun with rejection into a day of deep meaning and joy. We sat by the fireplace in his apartment, surrounded by the remains of the wonderful dinner he had prepared. The fire cast warm reflections on the walls, creating that special coziness that only happens in life's happiest moments. "Olivia," he said, taking my hands in his and looking at me with such intensity it took my breath away. "I know this year has been difficult for you because of your family's situation. I know they've caused you pain that runs deep, but I want you to know something. You're the most incredible woman I've ever met." His words washed over me like healing rain. Each syllable slowly dissolved the years of criticism and comparisons that had shaped my image of myself since childhood. I sat there holding my breath, afraid to move lest I ruin this moment. "You're kind to every animal that comes into the clinic, even the ones that try to bite you," he continued with a gentle smile. "You remember the names of all the elderly clients and always ask about their grandchildren. You cry during sad movies and laugh at my terrible dad jokes. You're beautiful inside and out, and I can't imagine my life without you." When he dropped to one knee in front of me with my grandmother's ring, a simple but elegant diamond setting that spoke of history and continuity rather than ostentation. The contrast with Macy's lavish engagement couldn't have been more obvious. Her proposal was a public spectacle designed to maximize social media exposure, with a photographer capturing every moment for the perfect Instagram post. Jake's proposal was intimate and authentic, focused entirely on our connection and not the perception of others. You know what the most amazing thing about true love? It doesn't require an audience. It exists in quiet moments, in small gestures, in the eyes of someone who looks at you as if you are the most precious being on earth. "Will you marry me?" Jake asked, his voice quiet but confident. I couldn't speak for a few seconds, too overwhelmed with emotion. Then the word "yes" came out of me like an exhale. Naturally, inevitably, as if my heart was answering itself before my mind could even process the question. Jake's family accepted me with an openness that seemed almost disorienting after years of tentative acceptance from my own relatives. His parents, Margaret and Robert, had invited me to dinner just 2 weeks after our engagement. I was nervous, preparing myself for an evening of the low-key politeness I was used to with my family. Instead, I found myself surrounded by a genuine warmth that stunned me with its immediacy. They asked thoughtful questions about my work at the animal shelter, my college experience, and my interests, listening with genuine curiosity rather than the polite indifference my parents had always shown toward my accomplishments. "Tell us more about your work with animals," Margaret asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. "Jake says you have a special approach to fearful dogs." And just like that, I found myself telling stories about rescued pets, about the techniques I developed for working with animals with traumatic pasts, about my dream of someday opening a rehabilitation center for abandoned animals. When I mentioned, in a slightly shaky voice, that my own parents would not be attending our wedding, Margaret's face softened with compassion. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry," she said, reaching across the table to cover my palm with hers. "But you know what? Family isn't always bound by blood. Sometimes we choose our own family, and we choose you." Those words made me cry right there at their dinner table because they represented everything I'd been denied as a child. Unconditional acceptance, support, a sense of belonging not because of how I looked or what I'd accomplished, but simply because I was me. Jake's sister, Amy, immediately included me in sisterly activities: shopping trips, bachelorette parties, family barbecues, treating me with a warmth and acceptance that Macy never showed, making me feel valued rather than constantly compared and recognized as inadequate. "You know you're stuck with me forever now, right?" she said one day, hugging me after trying on wedding dresses. "I've always wanted a sister that I can actually be friends with." Finding a wedding dress with Margaret, Amy, and my college friends was everything I dreamed of, but never thought I'd have. We spent the day going from one boutique to another, laughing and sharing stories. Every time I walked out of the fitting room in a new dress, I was greeted with genuine smiles and honest but kind feedback. They applauded when I found a simple but elegant A-silhouette dress that somehow made me graceful and beautiful. Margaret cried when she saw me in it. "Jake will fall in love with you all over again when he sees you in this," she said, her voice full of genuine joy. It was a stark contrast to my mother's dismissive comment when I mentioned wanting to go shopping for a wedding dress. "Well, we'll have to find something suitable." That single phrase contained so much doubt, so much implicit criticism, that I almost gave up on the idea of a traditional white dress for fear of looking ridiculous. Throughout the wedding planning process, Jake's family treated me as if I belonged to them, as if my opinion mattered and my happiness was a priority. Margaret helped with flower and decor choices, Robert offered his help with venue organization, and Amy took over the coordination of the bridesmaids. Meanwhile, my biological family remained defiantly disinterested. They declined our invitation with vague excuses about prior commitments. "Unfortunately, we already have a trip planned at this time," my mother informed me in a brief text message, without even bothering to call. In the meantime, they continued to post photos of their family time on social media, which painfully emphasized my exclusion. Photos from a family dinner with the caption, "The full lineup," especially hurt. The full lineup obviously didn't include me. The weeks leading up to our wedding became a study in contrasts. Jake's parents called regularly with offers of help and genuinely excited questions about our plans. "What do you think about the flowers on the tables? Have you found a photographer you're happy with? Can I help with the invitations?" At the same time, my own parents maintained a deafening silence that spoke volumes about their priorities. Not one call to ask about preparations, not a single offer of help, not the slightest indication that the most important day in their daughter's life held any significance. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. Even with the love and support of my new family, the absence of my biological family left a void that was hard to ignore. There were moments when I cried on Jake's shoulder, wondering what I'd done wrong to deserve such total rejection. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said each time, holding me and letting me cry. "It's their loss, Olivia. They're missing out on the chance to know the amazing person you are." Our wedding day approached like a beacon of hope, promising not just the official start of my life with Jake, but my formal inclusion into a family where I would be accepted and celebrated, not just tolerated. Despite the pain of missing my biological family, I found myself looking forward with hope and anticipation. Perhaps for the first time in my life, I began to realize what it meant to be truly loved. Not for how I looked, not for what I had to offer, but simply for who I was. And that realization was the most beautiful gift of all. Our wedding day arrived with perfect spring sunshine, as if nature itself wanted to welcome this new beginning. Soft light seeped through our bedroom curtains, promising a day filled with possibilities and new beginnings. Lying in bed that morning, I allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection on how far I had come from the girl who had so desperately sought the approval of a family that was never going to give it. Jake's family offered to pay for a larger celebration, but we both preferred something intimate and meaningful. We chose a beautiful garden venue that was literally exploding with colorful flowers and required minimal additional decoration. When I first saw this garden, with its winding paths and old trees, something inside me responded. It was a place where you were accepted for who you are, unideal, wild, but utterly beautiful just in its authenticity. You know, it's strange to realize that the happiest day of your life is happening without the participation of the people society tells you to love the most. And yet, as I put on my wedding dress in a small room at the back of the garden, I didn't feel empty, but full. Every person waiting outside was there because they genuinely wanted to share in our joy. The ceremony was exactly what we wanted. About 50 guests, consisting mostly of Jake's loving family, and my small circle of loyal college friends and coworkers from the animal shelter. This created an atmosphere of genuine warmth and celebration, rather than the social spectacle that my sister's wedding was. Over 300 people attended her ceremony, many of whom neither she nor David even knew personally, just important contacts of my parents and his firm, strategic introductions that could be useful in the future. Jake's cousin officiated the ceremony with a personal, heartfelt speech that honored our path and values. He spoke of how true love sees beyond the outer shell and into the heart of a person. His words resonated within me, touching all the scars that years of careless remarks from my family had left on me. Robert, Jake's father, led me down the aisle with a proud smile that brought tears to my eyes. "You look radiant, daughter," he whispered, squeezing my hand tightly before we began our journey. The way he called me daughter was such a simple word, but it held a whole world of acceptance and love. When Jake saw me coming, he began to openly cry. He told me later that it wasn't just because I looked beautiful, but because seeing his father walk me down the aisle felt like the last piece of their family puzzle was falling into place. In that moment, he told me later, I felt like the circle had closed. You had always been a part of us. We just didn't know it yet. The reception was filled with laughter, delicious food, and dancing that went on until late into the night. Jake's grandmother's friends shared stories about her and how she would have loved me. His college buddies made amusingly embarrassing speeches about what a good man he was. And my college friends expressed joy at seeing me truly happy, perhaps for the first time in my life. "I've never seen you so free," Rachel, my best friend since college, told me when we were alone for a moment. "It's like you finally shed some invisible weight." She was right. Not a single moment that day contained the judgment, criticism, or conditional approval that characterized my interactions with my biological family. Instead, everyone present genuinely celebrated our love and future together, creating a circle of support that felt like a protective shield against the years of rejection I had experienced. Meanwhile, my biological family spent that weekend at some lake house posting pictures on social media of their relaxing family vacation, with my mother commenting, "Family time is the best time," a statement that clearly excluded me from their definition of family. It stung, but Jake's relatives surrounded me with such love and acceptance that the pain felt distant rather than immediate. Our photographer friend captured beautiful images of the day, of Jake, looking incredibly handsome in his custom-made suit, and me, somehow looking genuinely happy and radiant. My usual shyness about my appearance was temporarily forgotten amidst the joy of marrying a man who loved me completely and being accepted by a family who saw my worth. I posted a few wedding photos on Facebook, mostly for my college friends and coworkers who couldn't attend. I don't usually share much on social media, but I felt the urge to document this perfect day and the happiness that radiated from every moment, visual evidence of finding belonging after years of feeling like an outsider. Jake and I left for a short honeymoon at a charming coastal bed and breakfast, returning to begin our life together in the cozy home we had chosen. We were blissfully unaware that our quiet happiness would soon dramatically intersect with my family's carefully constructed social facade. 6 months of peaceful married life passed. Our weekends were filled with brunches with Jake's parents, game nights with his sister and her husband, and the gradual intertwining of our lives in ways both profound and mundane. I began helping with administrative work at Jake's clinic a few days a week, using my organizational skills to optimize their systems, enjoying the simple pleasure of working alongside my husband, watching him care for the animals with the same tenderness and attention he showed me. Do you know what it means to see someone in their element? Watching Jake work with the animals was like watching a painter in front of a canvas or a musician with his favorite instrument. His movements were confident, his voice always calm, his hands firm but infinitely gentle. Even the most aggressive or frightened animals seemed to sense his genuine concern. "They're just scared," he often said of his most difficult patients. "They need to know they're safe before they can let us help." His words always echoed in me. Isn't that what he did for me too? created a safe space where I could begin to heal from all those years of being told I wasn't good enough, not beautiful enough, just not enough. Our life together was built on mutual respect and genuine appreciation. Jake valued my views and regularly asked my opinion on clinic matters, while I admired his expertise and compassion for both the animals and their often anxious owners. It created a partnership that felt balanced and nourishing, rather than the constant competition that characterized my family dynamic growing up. "What do you think of this new recording system?" he asked one day after a long day at the clinic. "You spend more time with it than any of us." I shared a few ideas for improvement, and he listened intently, taking notes and asking clarifying questions. It was so simple, yet so deeply meaningful to be heard, to have a valued opinion, to be respected as an equal. On quiet evenings, we would often sit in our backyard talking about our day, dreaming about the future, or just existing in the comfortable silence that can only be found with someone who truly sees you and loves you for who you are. I've often caught myself thinking that this is what home means, not a physical place, but a sense of belonging that you carry within you. The foundation of acceptance and love we had built together was soon to be tested in ways neither of us could have foreseen. A casual observation on social media was about to shatter the careful distance I maintained from my biological family and expose the superficial values that had always governed their treatment of me. But in those serene 6 months before everything changed, I finally learned what it was like to live without the constant weight of inadequacy. I began to see myself through the eyes of Jake and his family valuable, loved, worthy, and slowly, but surely, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd been right all along. My life turned upside down 6 months after our wedding. It started with the insane amount of notifications on my phone and Macy's hysterical call. "Why didn't you tell us your husband was rich?" I was sitting at the kitchen table going over the bills when that call came through. At first, I didn't even realize what she was talking about. Her voice shook with emotion, a mixture of outrage and something akin to envy. Turns out David was scrolling through Facebook when he came across our wedding photos. It wasn't Jake and I standing under an arch of flowers, or my happy smile, or the tenderness in my husband's eyes that caught his attention. No, he noticed the watch on Jake's wrist, an expensive vintage watch inherited from his grandfather. And then David began to connect the dots, realizing that my husband wasn't just some country vet, but a man from a family with serious wealth and success. "You should have told us," Macy yelled into the phone. "You kept it from us on purpose." The domino effect that followed was both shocking and grimly confirming everything I had ever suspected about my family. David, the man who supposedly couldn't be around me because of my looks, became obsessed with the discovery that I had gotten someone with more wealth, prestige, and, according to Macy's tearful account, better looks than himself. His obsession turned into a real crisis that culminated in him leaving the divorce papers on their kitchen table and moving out. "He's completely out of his mind," Macy sobbed during our second conversation. "All the time talking about your husband, about his family, about how I overlooked this opportunity, like I should have known." The irony of the situation didn't escape me. The man who thought I wasn't attractive enough for a family Christmas dinner was now jealous of my marriage enough to ruin his own. My mother called next, suddenly very interested in meeting Jake and properly welcoming him into the family. She was followed by my father, who claimed that they had always supported my choices and were proud of me for catching such a catch. The same parents who had explicitly excluded me from Christmas dinner because my face could ruin everything were now desperately trying to squeeze themselves into my life. Their transparent motivation made me nauseous. "Honey, we always knew you were special," Mom sang sweetly into the tube. "We just want to get to know Jake better. Why don't you come over for dinner this Friday? I'll make his favorite dish." She didn't even know what Jake liked. She'd never asked. The cascade of calls continued, distant relatives and long silent family members suddenly wanting to reconnect. They asked for Jake's card for their pets, inquired about job opportunities at his clinics, and tried to add me as a Facebook friend after years of ignoring my existence. Each conversation showed with painful clarity that they weren't sorry for the way they treated me, or apologizing for excluding me, or calling me ugly, or making me feel worthless for years. They were just sorry they missed the opportunity to mess with Jake's money and status. The most surreal moment came when Macy called again, this time really asking if Jake would be interested in dating a newly single woman who had always loved animals. My sister, who had called me too ugly for Christmas dinner, was now suggesting that my husband leave me for her after her divorce. The request was so shockingly presumptuous that I could only respond with stunned silence before hanging up. "Is she serious now?" I whispered to myself, looking at the silenced phone in my hand. Jake found the whole situation darkly humorous. "Aren't these the people who were too busy to come to our wedding?" he commented occasionally as I took increasingly desperate calls. And his mother wisely remarked, "People like your family are exactly the reason why Jake keeps his background a secret," immediately realizing something that took me years to fully accept, that my biological family valued appearances and connections above true human worth. "We always tried to be humble," Margaret explained as we discussed my family's behavior. "Money has a way of attracting the wrong people for the wrong reasons. Jake always wanted to be loved for who he was, not what he had." The conversations that followed revealed the true depth of my family's toxic narcissism. Macy alternated between rage over my hiding Jake's origins from them and desperate attempts to use our sisterly bond to access his contacts. She claimed I was selfish for not using my relationship for their benefit, failing to see the irony in the way they excluded me from family events because of my appearance. "You could have introduced David to Jake's parents any time," she accused me. "You know how that would have helped his career. But no, you had to keep it a secret to get back at us." My mother tried to rewrite history, insisting that she never called me ugly, but was just trying to protect me from David's rudeness. My father tried to connect with me through Jake's success and steered conversations toward business opportunities and whether Jake's family needed legal advice. "I could offer my services to them at a significant discount," he said during one of the calls, completely unaware of the irony that Jake's family could afford attorneys far more senior than him. Family members who had actively avoided me for years suddenly found urgent reasons to reconnect. Their persistent questions about Jake's family business transparently revealed their motives. I was struck by how obvious their greed was and how they seemed completely unaware of how transparent their intentions were. Macy's repeated attempts to squeeze herself into our lives culminated in the disturbing revelation that she had actually driven 2 hours to Jake's clinic to accidentally run into him, bringing her healthy dog to an unnecessary appointment and trying to flirt with my husband. She was in full makeup and a dress that was clearly inappropriate for a trip to the vet, Jake told me that night, shaking his head in bewilderment. She kept saying how talented I was and asked if I could recommend any good restaurants nearby, hinting that I could show her myself. When Macy's behavior escalated into appearances at places we frequented, and she was eventually caught taking pictures through our windows late at night, the police had to intervene. She was given a formal warning for stalking and trespassing, finally making the seriousness of the situation impossible to ignore or dismiss as family drama. The most unexpected turn came when Margaret, Jake's mother, who served on the board of directors of several companies, including David's law firm, discovered not only that David was having an affair with a paralegal at his firm, violating their strict policy against working relationships, but that his unprofessional behavior after our wedding photos violated the firm's morals clause, leading to his forced resignation and subsequent financial ruin. "I didn't mean for that to happen," Margaret told me softly. "But when his behavior was reported to me, I couldn't ignore it. There are standards in our firm." After receiving a formal cease and desist letter from Jake's family's attorney warning of criminal charges and civil suits if she continued her harassment, Macy finally backed down. The letter, delivered to my parents' home, where she'd been staying since the divorce, ensured that they were fully aware of the depths to which their golden child had sunk, a humbling revelation that prompted my father to leave a belated voicemail expressing disappointment in Macy's behavior and attempting to apologize for the family drama. "Olivia," he began hesitantly, it's gone too far. Macy's not herself since the divorce, and I just want you to know that we don't approve of what she did. Maybe we could talk?" But it was too late. Jake and I had made the decision to cut contact with my biological family completely, blocking their numbers, deleting them from social media, and planning a Christmas trip to Paris instead of interacting with their toxic dynamic. Standing on the Eiffel Tower months later, with Jake's arms around me, I reflected on the path that led me from being the family ugly duckling to finding true belonging with someone who saw my true value. I realized that while I didn't choose the painful rejection that shaped my early life, I could choose the boundaries and relationships that would shape my future. Paris was beautiful that Christmas, a city of lights, truly living up to its name. As the snow fell lightly around us and the Eiffel Tower shone its hour-long light, I felt like I was finally completely free from the shadows of my past. "What are you thinking about?" Jake asked, pulling me closer, shielding me from the cold. "About how long I've lived my life seeking approval from people who were never going to give it," I answered honestly. "And how grateful I am to have found a true family in you." The truth that emerged from that painful reckoning concerned not only the superficiality of my family or Jake's hidden wealth, but the profound difference between conditional approval based on external standards and true love based on who someone really is. Jake and his family fully accepted me before learning anything about my ability to benefit them, while my biological family rejected me until they discovered my potential usefulness. This contrast finally freed me from the desperate hope for their acceptance that had haunted me since childhood. I realized that true worth is not measured by outward beauty or social status, but by the ability to love and be loved sincerely, unconditionally. Standing there, under the Parisian sky, I knew I would no longer let the past define my self-worth or darken my future. Instead, I chose a life filled with authentic connections, mutual respect, and most importantly, a love that sees and appreciates the real me.